Hey everybody. So this is a intro video for a series of videos I plan on putting up where each video I'm going to go through the different cognitive functions and just sort of explain my interpretation of what I think they are and what I think they're doing. But I'm hoping that you'll watch this video first so that I can sort of explain some of the caveats, some of the nuances, some of the acknowledgements that you should do up front so that I don't have to do it for every video. So the first thing, if you're sort of new to this, or even if you've been doing this for years, the thing to keep in mind when you're talking about personality psychology, personality types, cognitive functions, personality psychology, you have to understand, you have to keep in mind that this is all just discourse, right? This is just people, we all have a general sense that there are different personality types. We have a general sense, a shared common general sense of what we think those types are. But there are going to be nuances and there's going to be differences of interpretation. And that's just because the only way we can do this is through verbal discourse and coming up with some sort of description of what we think is going on. And that is just inherently, anytime you're relying on language to define things or to draw barriers or to separate one thing from another thing and to create categories and definitions, there's just naturally going to be some slippage. There's going to be gaps that get left unfilled. There are going to be concepts that we think of as discrete, like introverted intuition versus extroverted intuition, where there might be some fuzziness and some overlap. And that's what the discourse is all about, is teasing all that stuff together or teasing it all apart and trying to come up with, the best sort of description of the phenomenon that we can. And so, along the years, people, starting with Jung, where you just sort of threw the idea out there, people have sort of refined it and they've gone in one direction or another direction. And, and they're sort of drawing their own little verbal lines and creating their own verbal categories and discrete differences between the functions and the different types. But, again, as far as I've seen, nothing's perfect. And so I'm hoping that even though I'm going to give you my interpretation based off of my experience with working with the cognitive functions, I understand it might be very, very different from what the ways that other people describe them. Even Jung, like there's going to be, so Jung sort of created the foundation of all of this, but I don't think, his word is the final word on any of this, right? I mean, a lot has developed in cognitive psychology and in personality psychology since, his day. And he was also doing it for very different reasons, right? I mean, he was a psychoanalyst, and what I like to say is, his psychological types, his writings on that were largely just a field guide for other practitioners, for other analysts, letting them know, hey, if you've got this sort of person, if they happen to be a thinker that sort of, and they're oriented towards the extroverted world or the outside world, they tend to have these types of psychoses. They tend to have these types of psychological issues, and here's why. And he wasn't, but it wasn't like what you get on, the forums and the chat boards and all the YouTube videos where everybody's like trying to distill down and drill down and come up with some sort of analytical model describing everything. His was very high surface and practical in a lot of ways. Okay. And the other thing that I'd ask you to keep in mind is that just keep in mind what the whole purpose of psychological types, personality types, cognitive functions is. And that's really just to make things easier for you in dealing with other people or understanding other people. Because we're all starting from the basic assumption that there are different personality types. None of us would be here if we didn't think that was true. And then it's a matter of, okay, if we all agree that there's different personality types and we all agree to some extent the cognitive functions and their sort of ordering by and large defines what the different personality types are. Now we can just sort of discuss the details and what makes the most sense and what doesn't seem to sort of match up with our general observations of the different types. But at the end of the day, I mean, that's all fun and good. All the academic diving into whether something is extroverted feeling or introverted feeling, or if it's thinking. That's all fun. What type is somebody? What type is Joe Rogan? What type is Bill Gates? But at the end of the day, you need to walk away from it, developing your own framework that works for you. And this isn't some sort of postmodern, find your own truth sort of argument, but there's nobody's going to be able to explain it with 100% precision or 100% accuracy. And so, watch different people that have different viewpoints, that think of it in different ways, and then all the patterns will just start to form, right? And you'll probably create your own interpretation of it, and what the different functions are doing. And as long as it works for you and it has some sort of predictive, useful value when you're dealing with other people, then that's great. That's the whole point of doing all of this. Because nobody's going to come down from on top of the mountain and tell so-and-so that they're right and the other person's wrong. This is just going to be discourse forever. But the important thing is if you're going to spend any time learning this stuff, then you might as well find some practical application and, understanding in a way that works for you and in a way that jibes with the way that you think of the world. Why you have to explain things differently to different types, or why one type might think something is important that you don't think is important at all. And it'll just help you with your interaction with people. And along the years, it's really, I just sort of personally, it's really helped me because, just starting with the basic understanding that not everybody thinks about everything the same way, that already puts you ahead of, like 50 to 60% of the people out there. And then just sort of, picking up on cues and picking up on, what the different cognitive functions people tend to use or care about. Then you understand, okay, how do I interact with this person? If this is a professor, what is the stuff that they're going to be looking for on a test? What do they seem to care about? Or if it's a client or a coworker, are they the type of person that wants a big, long descriptive email that summarizes all the nuances and all the counter arguments for the response that you're giving them? Or are they just the type of person that just wants you to tell them yes or no so that they can get this thing off their desk and move on to the next thing, right? And so understanding the different people and the different types really, really helps. And just to sort of wrap this up, I'll probably post a longer video about it, but I just saw a video of one of these CIA guys that, has a book or some sort of podcast or something out there. And he's sort of making the rounds on the various podcasts. And I caught one where he was talking about how when he was in the CIA, they trained him on how to read people. And the way that he described it was, they would describe it as you had people who were lions, who were, all about organizing and systematizing things. You had people who were, I think, cheetahs, who were more about just sort of taking action, just hopping on a plane or hopping in the car and just doing, taking action. Then you had people who were bears, and they were sort of the mother bear loving type. They take people and into account when making their decisions. And then the last one was foxes, people who are idea people, and they just like to talk about ideas. And you could see how that tracks or how that maps on to the cognitive functions. Not exactly, but it's, even the CIA, when they're training agents who are out there putting their lives on the line, and, really, really need to know how to read people, it basically boils down to, the four type of functions, thinking, your lions who are systematizing and organizing things, sensing, which I'll get into in that video, the cheetah that's all about action and, taking action in the world and doing things. The bear, who's the mother bear, that would be the feeling function. And then the fox, that's the idea person, that probably maps on to your intuitive types, right? And there's all, and even the oceans model, or what psychologists will call the big five, personality factors. They loosely map on to the Jungian cognitive functions. But again, it's all just sort of discourse. It's all just sort of a different way of describing basically the same essential thing that we're all sort of getting at. But just sort of describing it and setting it up in a framework that, is different for different people. Point being, as long as it's useful for you, and as long as you can use this information in a practical way that benefits you in some respect, just makes it easier for you to understand and interact with people and to just sort of read the room when dealing with people, then that's really all you need. And if I think introverted thinking is one thing and Dave Superpowers thinks that it's something else, that's cool. It's going to be somewhere in the middle probably. And, it's up to every viewer to sort of come up with their own sort of interpretation on how that works. Okay, so enjoy the videos. Again, each of them is just going to go through the different functions and, my personal take, on how they work. Now, of course, this is based off of what a lot of other people have written and said. I didn't come up with this out of nowhere. But it might be a little different from other descriptions that you've seen on the internet or seen online or in different books. And that's cool. It's up to you to sort of reconcile any sort of differences that you see. And then I also invite you to, if you want to comment in good faith, and, have questions or, nuances or things that you want to point out, go for it. And even if you want to do a response video, I'm happy to interact on that level. Okay. And then also keep in mind, these are going to be short videos and there's no way you can describe all the functions in a short video. I mean, people spend years, decades, careers, trying to nail down what exactly, introverted feeling might be. So not going to happen in a 15-minute video. So I apologize if I sort of gloss over something or miss some big nuance point that should have obviously been mentioned or something like that. Live with it. But again, happy to interact if anybody has anything that they want to say. Okay, enjoy. And again, welcome to the channel. Hope you get something useful out of it. Okay, bye.